Okay, welcome everybody. This is Robot Builders Night Virtual for January 30th, and we'll do the usual collect topics and see who's doing what, and go around the table. Then we'll do a round table. So, who's got a topic that they want to present?
I have been working on my sensors on my robot.
Okay, Mike. Anyone else? Let's see, we have 10 people. Well, might be a brief meeting tonight, or else we'll chat a while. Okay. And
Doug might have something. Doug Dodge.
Yeah. Doug, do you have anything you want to talk about while we're?
I have no new updates.
Okay.
I wonder why my camera hasn't started up.
All right. I think we're still gathering a few people. Okay, well, Mike, why don't you kick us off?
Okay. Well, I'm working on my robot and decided to take a break from navigation. Of course, I think people are aware that I'm going with ROS as the software or what do you call that? Well, the operating system. Okay, the robot system. What would you call that, Paul? I don't like
robot operating system, ROS 2.
Okay, I guess I'll just go with that. and so I'm working with some sensors, and one sensor I have, I'm trying to prototype it right now before I bolt it together and put it on the machine. But that's this here. It's a, trying to see. So basically it has 3 time of flight sensors, and each of them are 8x8. And so I put them on a device here that I made that spaces them so that I get a 180-degree field. And then the Arduino code, I'm going to try to share the Arduino code here. Or the Arduino results. Where's my Arduino? Oh, here it is. So on the bottom is the 3 different sensors spliced together, and so. Yeah, it's really touchy with wires, and they're not that great. But you can see, while I'm putting my hand close to one of the sensors, you can see the values are changing. Like that's the front sensor here. And I've tested it so when I go around, it detects it all the way around. And so it's basically, it's Arduino code right now. So I'm going to mount it. Well, I'm controlling it with a Raspberry Pico, and I'll also be managing my IMU with it. So this Raspberry Pi Pico will be it'll be managing these 3 sensors and the IMU, and then formatting it and sending it over to the Raspberry Pi, and then ROS will take it from there. So I just have to get it formatted properly so that then it can work with the ROS sensor packages. And the ROS sensor seems to integrate real well with the IMU. I'm using the B&O 055 one I bought. And so I'm gonna close this down because it's not that interesting. But one thing oh, what happened? Sorry. Oh, I closed it. Okay.
Mike, are you saying that an Arduino aggregates the sensor data from the TOF sensors and an RPi Pico reads the IMU and they each send the data up to the ROS2 system?
No, I'm saying that the Pi Pico uses I2C to get data from the IMU and the 3 sensors I have.
Oh, is the Pi Pico running Arduino code?
Right. Mm-hmm.
Okay, got it.
C++ code instead of Python, right.
Yeah.
And it seems like the libraries are really what, I'm looking for where I can find good libraries, and that seems to be the best plus on Arduino. One thing I noticed with these sensors is the only way to change the address of them is to write to them. And so I got that working, but it's a little flaw, a little stumbling block, and that is if you have to power up basically the sensors power up with a default I2C address. And then you can enable each I2C interface and then set the address to what you want. And if anything happens and you need to reinitialize it, you can't reset the sensors because there's no way to get it to the default values. Like the reset pin doesn't do it, it just resets the I2C logic. So you have to cycle the power on it. So I'm looking for a way to cycle the power on it. I'm thinking I'm probably going to use an FET on the 3-volt line just to turn it on and off.
Mike, have you considered going through an I2C multiplexer instead? That might be
No, it's already wired up. I'm not rewiring it. Yeah.
It skips the power reset, the individual power resets, and the individual.
Yeah. So you can see here I have a bunch of wires and stuff.
Oh yeah.
And it's all to a set of headers that are going to be used to mount the board.
Yeah.
And so I have all the I2Cs tied together and stuff like that. And I'm not going to redo it. So, so I think just cycling the power will do the job. So, and then another thing.
And then
what about tying the power pin to an output pin on your Arduino?
Pardon?
Tying your 3 different time-of-flight sensors, tying
Right.
the power pin from each of the time-of-flight sensors to an output pin on the Arduino.
Well,
And when you power up the output pin, it turns on that sensor, and you can address them one at a time.
Well, I want them to be ranging all at the same time so I can get a good ranging rate.
Yeah, well, once you've powered them up
Right.
and gave them a new address,
Right.
then you leave that output pin on, and
Right.
sensor is acting all the time.
Had any idea what the peak current load is of the sensor when it's actually running?
I think each sensor can be 100 milliamps.
So that's not going to work from an output pin.
No, it won't with an output pin then.
I think it's sort of typical 50, but if you look at the max, it can be pretty high.
Even 50 might be too high for an Arduino. I'm not sure what.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, anything over 15 milliamps.
Right.
On
And so,
on the old AVRs at least.
right. And so I also have the OpenMV camera mounted right on the robot right there, and I'm going to mount the sensor right here on these headers underneath the OpenMV camera, and it'll be a nice way to a good solid mount, which puts it real close to the camera, and put the IMU right there. So all those components be there, and then I might have to get a laser ranger, one of those rotating laser rangers, and put it on top. So, and also there's another set of sensors I have, which is this, and it's basically a 180-degree field of view simple sensor. Not field of view, time of flight, and I'm going to put it on the very back so that I have a backup bumper. It's hard to see here, but
What's the shiny thing below the camera? Is that a bumper or what is it?
what do you mean shiny
You
thing?
turn it around. The thing below the camera on the other side, facing you.
Oh, that's a screen. I'm going to take the screen off eventually.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Right now-
I thought it looked like a monitor, and I was like, "What's that doing on the front of a robot?"
Right. Yeah, I thought I would want it there, but then I want the sensors down a little lower, so it has to go. It'll save power too. Yeah.
Hey,
so.
Mike, can you hold it up a little? I can't see the bottom of the robot.
You want to see the bottom side?
Yeah, I was just wondering. I was trying to. I couldn't picture it. Oh, so this is the one that you've been working with the carbon fiber rods, right?
Right.
Okay, cool.
And
So can you show me
so I
the
got huh?
show me the top again now? I understand. I didn't know which one it was you were talking about.
Yeah. So I have, like on the bottom, you can see here that I got the wheels, and the wheels have encoders, and I also have the what do you call dummy wheels for that have encoders. Those go builders, and so I want to start using those because they have really good resolution. Actually, both of them have pretty good resolution, like 1,000 ticks per rotation, or per
Yeah. That's going to be sub-millimeters. You don't. That's not going to be a limiting problem.
Right. And this is the top here. I have a long pole. I have to cut it down to size someday. And so you can see on this right side there's the power supplies,
Right.
and on the back is the motor controller and encoders. And so the motor controller and encoders have a Pi Pico on it to manage them and interface to ROS. And I have that working because I can run ROS code and drive the robot and get the sensors into RViz and track the robot and stuff. And then on the left, of course, is the Raspberry Pi.
Cool.
So that's my robot.
It's pretty cool.
Wow.
Yeah, so I have three power. I have like a 16-volt battery or 14-volt battery, and I have a 3-volt regulator for the motors, and then I got two 5-volt regulators. One's for the Pi, and the other one's for all the other stuff, all the sensors and stuff like that.
Mike, is the interface between the Raspberry Pi and the Pico just a serial interface?
Yeah. So you can see here it's a really cute red cable.
So it's USB.
Yeah. So I'm just going to have USB interfaces from the Raspberry Pi to all the microcontrollers. Because they're fast and simple and robust. But I don't want to run the power through them, so you can see that I got these power cables here going from the regulators to that module, and I'll have one here going up to here, and then the Raspberry Pi runs off of this module. So,
What rating are those switch mode power supplies? 5 amps?
and they're probably only good for 3.
Okay, all right.
They start rippling a lot. So I've had to add lots of capacitors to them to try to get the ripple down. So that's what I'm working on in terms of sensors. And today I was trying to get the multiple sensors running, trying to figure out how to do it with the code. And I finally figured it out. But then they had that power reset. It's like, oh, that's what's driving me crazy. So after I program the part, then I unplug the USB cable and then plug it back in, and everything starts running. So I just need to get a power switch, which an FET will do a really good job of that, and just control the FET with a GPIO.
I know a lot of devices.
Are your power supply? Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, I know a lot of I2C devices allow you to strap to get different addresses. I wonder if those little time of flight sensors of yours on the board.
Unfortunately not. No. Yeah.
No.
Just wondering, can you adjust the output voltage of your 5-volt regulators?
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
So,
I wonder
so I
if
cranked it up.
for the Raspberry Pi.
Right. So I cranked it up a bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. The Raspberry Pi was giving me under voltage warnings. Yeah.
Right.
So
I have
that-
read that, yes.
I'll give you another half a volt. Yeah. So. So. That's what I'm doing. I'd like to get back to the ROS2 navigation, but right now I have a DYI navigator. But I'm using I took the wheel encoders and put them through the extended Kalman filter, so that so I got all the wire software wiring done. So now, hopefully, all I need to do is get the IMU running and then add it to the Kalman filter, but right now when I run this thing on waypoints. I got 4 waypoints that I did, and they're on a 1 meter by 1 meter grid. So I just let it run around it, and I let it run around dozens of times, and I haven't seen any drift. I mean, well, I'm sure there's some drift, but it's just looking at the eyeball. It's like, hey, it's not in the corner of the room, I mean, it's like a centimeter. So those wheel encoders are pretty good, but they can slip. And right now I run it really slow so they don't slip. So I'm hoping that the encoder pods will let me run the wheels faster and let them slip and not ruin my my encoder feedback. So.
Are you slewing the speed up?
Pardon?
Are you using slewing on your speed? That can help with slipping as well.
I have it, and it really, well, it messes up the loop behavior, like the closed loop behavior, and I'm hoping that the navigator can handle it more, because right now I have the maximum acceleration controlled in the Pi controlling the wheels, which is the ideal place to put it. But in the navigation package of ROS2, they seem to have an acceleration control there. So it probably can manage it better if I use it as part of that package, so it'll have the right. I don't in my closed loop between the encoder and the motor. I have one PID in that Pico P that says it gets the meters per second code or command from ROS, and it uses the encoders to precisely make it run at 1 meter per second, the wheels or whatever it wants to that. So I got a closed loop with a PID in there. Well, actually a PD. A PI. Differential isn't I don't use differential usually, just a proportional and integral. And you need another loop on the outside going through ROS to control the entire loop. So when it says go to the XY coordinate, then as it approaches it, it has to, scale down and get there cleanly. Right now, if I run too fast, it'll overshoot and oscillate.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I said, I'm not going to deal with that that loop filter. I'm going to use whatever's in Navigator. But that's going to be I've opened up the Navigator package and my head starts hurting, and so I close it again. So someday I'll open it up and do a lot more of the tutorials and classwork and try to figure it out.
That package is notorious for needing tuning and and for being challenging to tune. From what I've heard, I've not used it, so I'm very interested in your experience, Mike.
Yeah. Well, I'm just trying to get it up and running because I want to get it up without using SLAM or maps or anything like that. Just use it for navigation to waypoints. And so I want to dumb it way down, and I haven't quite figured out how to do that yet. All the tutorials are saying, hey, we got all these bells and whistles, turn them all at the same time. This is how to do it. And I want something dumb. It's like, okay, I just have wheel encoders. I want to go to a couple waypoints. How do I use Navigator to do that? So I'm trying to figure it out. And I want to do it there and then start adding sensors to it. Like the camera. Like the camera would have a detect the blob detection for, I want to go here to this can. And if I do it right, I think I could actually detect the walls. So I might be able to know where I am in the space, but I'll probably end up using the LiDAR on the top to map, to be able to map all the walls inside. Like in 6CAN, I'm going to have it down to 7 inches or so I can map the walls of the course. Mm-hmm. It really restricts your height. And I didn't think of that when I started building my robot, and it's already pretty high.
That's a pretty big robot for 6CANs.
Yeah.
It reminds me of something that the guys at Lockheed Martin used to say when I worked there about the trucks. There's a race to the top of the robot. The GPS wants to be there so it can have a clear view of the sky, and the LiDAR wants to be there so it can not have obstructions from like support mounts and whatever. And I think the cameras like to be there so they don't have obstructed view. And so everyone wants to be at the top of the sensor pole.
Yeah. Yeah. So they all want to be right here.
Yeah. Right.
Right. Well, that's where I'm putting everything. So, yeah.
It's a nice looking robot, Mike.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Let me make thanks, Mike. Let me make a second call since some people have joined for topics and add to the queue.
All right. I'm done with mine. Yeah.
Nothing from me.
Okay. No, all right. I've got a couple of things that I wanted to bring up, and let me just get them. So want to find. There's a couple of people I want to find out if, or let me see where to begin. The email reflector, about half of the club members aren't getting messages from it, and I didn't have a reply from Mickey Dean or Doug Dodgen as to whether they are receiving messages from the DPRG list reflector. Can you guys tell me just off the top?
I thought I had responded to that. Maybe I didn't respond correctly.
Maybe I just didn't understand your response. So,
okay.
Are you getting DPRG list messages or no? You are. And what about Mickey Dean?
He's chatting. And he's not.
Mickey Dean is not. Okay, great.
Yeah. Well, I'm not either. I mean, the only message I get is the GPRG meeting request.
Yeah, I believe I've got you on that list, Doug, and I'm going to become a manual reflector. I'll call it the Paul Bouchier listserv, where I copy stuff out of the listserv, compile it into a daily digest, and send it on to a list that I'll maintain manually. Let's see. Let me just check you, Mike. I've got a list here.
So I thought I went through and clicked on everything properly, but I must have missed something.
Where's Mike? Mike. He's up top, I think. I'm gonna have to look for that. Make sure my records are right. And let's see, John K.
I haven't responded, but I think the answer is no. Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
In other words, yeah, I haven't looked that closely because I don't check email stuff often.
All right.
Based on what I think I remember last, the answer is no.
All right. Thank you. Then something I was wondering is I was looking back through DPRG archives, and let me just throw this out as a general topic because it's kind of surfaced on the Dallas Makerspace list a little bit. The idea of holding beginner build your first robot kinds of classes. And I don't have an indoor robot. And Doug had taught a build your own robot, and in fact he did a video of it, and it's got 42,000 views. It looks like the most viewed video on a DPRG clips.
There are several others that are better, but I will say that I will say this though, that I do plan to do a beginner class at Dallas Makerspace later in the year, but I don't have the bandwidth right now because of my situation. So so that will happen later in the year. But other people could teach classes too. So I mean, that's a thing. I'm actually kind of curious of whoever teaches always learns more than the students does. I mean, it's just invariable that they ask good questions and that you end up having to really figure out what's going on. And I always like the challenge of trying to give them a goodish, I call it a goodish platform. It's something that's doesn't make all of the mistakes that the commercial platforms start off with, the problems like giving you 6 volts power supply for a 5-volt system that has an onboard linear regulator that has a drop voltage of like 0.7 or 0.8, so it's just not going to work very reliably. So those type of problems, you want to be able to get them around. And anyway, that's going to happen later in the year for myself, just for my own thing. But
thanks, Doug. And so I was looking at the robot that you had suggested. It was one available on Amazon for like $23 or so. Is that still what you consider a goodish robot?
No, that's not a goodish robot. That's absolutely, but that is the cheapest robot I could find that had all the parts. And you couldn't buy the parts. You couldn't buy the parts for the cost of the robot. You know what I mean? The robot's price, if you went out and tried to buy those same parts, it would have cost you more. So, I mean, but boy, I mean, it's got it has a lot of problems. Okay, but anyway, that's something for later in the year for me.
In other words, he's right. When you buy the individual parts, yeah, it costs more. That's a baseline, but
Yeah.
with modifications bid time
And you also have to,
at the bridge and that,
you know,
and we've always regulated them.
yeah, I can say that the course will have, some of the parts will probably be fabricated by myself on a laser printer and whatnot, so I can overcome some of the issues and get everybody on the same. Because, you know, when you're starting off a very beginner class, money is an issue. You know, so, because most of the people are taking the class, they don't really know what this is all about yet. And so,
Yeah.
you know, so what you want to do is give them enough capabilities, show them enough different types of robot, you know, configurations and stuff, that they start to see, well, you know, if I'd have had a better one of these, I would have, you know, I would have been a lot better off. And that's what I'm trying to do for a goodish robot, is I try to get those better parts.
Do you have a suggestion that someone like me, I haven't built many robots myself, and I suck at mechanical stuff. Do you have a favorite one that you like?
You mean a kit? No.
Yeah.
That's one of the things I enjoy. I think you know, that's why I enjoy Mike's robots, is because, you know, he's building, you know, that's the only one in the world like that. Okay. Now we did have, there's some really good ideas in the 2016 DPRG club robot build. All right, and I think a lot of those details are out there now. The software, you know, and everything's probably not as good. You know, it'd be okay to get you started, but I wouldn't recommend it as a final version.
So, do we have a list of sort of like the basic motors that would be best?
Well,
things
have changed. Yeah, things have changed.
Changed in the last couple of years.
Yeah,
you're right. I haven't really looked in the last 3 or 4 years, and like Paul, sort of my robots are a little on the ancient side. Yeah. So
I don't really like TT motors.
I know.
I don't really like the little yellow motors. Even the DF robot one that has the encoder, it's better. Okay, but that's, you know, I'd much rather have something like a polo motor. So now you have to say, well, how do you get, there is a source of small 20 millimeter motors that I have run across, where the guy, what it is this company made a robot kit many years ago, and it was a failure, and they had a stockpile of these 20 millimeter robots, and they were like selling them for like $3 or $4 a piece, and they're probably $20 to $30 motors now. So
I think I bought a bucket full of those when you brought them up that time too. I got them over here waiting to do something with.
Yeah. But anyway, that's, like I say, that's enough. One of the things I did want to let you guys know is, give me a click here, and do F5. Yes, there are currently, DigiKey has 663 Raspberry Pi 8 gig boards, so for $80. But after
I'm placing an order right now.
After you pay taxes and state sales shipping and state taxes, it's going to be about $96. So,
and that's the Raspberry Pi 5.
5s or 4s?
No, these are 5s. They're Raspberry Pi 5 8 gig boards.
And by whom?
DigiKey.
DigiKey.
Yeah, I bought one today. I've been on the way. I have been waiting for my order to fill out from SparkFrom since October. So, since they obviously aren't on the value, either they got a gazillion, backlot of 1 million, or they're not a favored supplier. But DigiKey, like I say, Mike noticed earlier that I think that's where you got your mic. Mike, wasn't it on DigiKey? Your 5?
Mike, me?
Yeah. You
Oh,
got,
I never got a 5.
oh, you never.
No.
Somebody's got a 5. I'm trying to figure out who it is. Anyway.
Brendan's got a 5.
Oh, okay, Brandon. I'm sorry, Brandon. So anyway, here's this. They have them right there now. So something to think about.
Yeah, well, that's one reason why I'm really interested in getting Docker running on my Pi, so I can upgrade it to a 5 someday with minimal disruption.
Yeah. The big thing about the 5 that a lot of people probably don't know is it's. You remember a couple of years ago, when they went to the 4, I think they broke all of the video applications because they changed the way they handled cameras. Well, okay, this time, because they are now handling their GPIO out through a Raspberry Pico type board. I don't think it's it's a chip on the. I don't think it's an RP2040. It's some sort of, but it's like an RP2040. So that's broken all of the GPIO libraries in the world on a 5. So, if you get a 5 now, don't think it's going to, right now there's a lot of immature stuff going on that's not going to be quite right for a while. Now we all use the new camera modules and everything works and nobody even thinks about it. It'll be, about a year before that happens, I figure, for all of the libraries to get working again.
Yeah, that's one reason I'm holding off is it's sort of not ready for prime time yet.
Yeah, well, if you're doing, it depends on what you're doing. If you're doing, you're not doing a robot. If you're doing like, I want a PC, but I want it to be a Raspberry, then it's great.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
I did
I
get. Yeah,
I might get one to run some media software on it. But
yeah. That's another one that a lot of people are doing it for. Though I will say this, I did get an Orange Pi 5, and for that type of application, I think it's a better board. Okay. I haven't figured, there's a lot there, the whole community and everything is a little immature. But I was able to put Ubuntu on it and run it real well, but I haven't really screwed with the GPIOs yet, so I don't know what's there to, how that's a potential problem too. So, but anyway. One thing that I did get that's kind of cool is a underboard. I don't know what they call it. It's an underboard. It goes under the Pi 5. It takes advantage of their what is it? It's basically PC Express, but I don't know what the version is that goes underneath. And so what you do is you put this board under, and it has about a 1/4 inch standoffs, and you put your SSD drive in that, and then the Pi 5 stands on top of it, and it has a little cable that comes over into that particular bus on the Pi 5. And I'm sorry, I don't remember all of the bus names. And so like I say, that's good because that comes natively with the Orange Pis. I mean, you just slap a drive in the bottom of it and it works. So,
oh, nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, on the Raspberry Pi, I was thinking of using as I2C, but I was looking up stuff and they say that it doesn't handle some of the I2C stuff like clock stretching and
I don't know
stuff
if
like that.
That's true, and I haven't checked that out on the latest version. Okay, there's a book that you definitely need to get, and I'll find it somewhere in here.
Yeah.
And I recently
put Picos on it and use it for I2C.
Yeah. Well, sooner or later, the problem I have with the Pi is it would have been nice if you had access to more than one serial port. But I guess you, like if you're using USB, I guess that works too. So
Right.
let's see. Anyway,
The guy B, you can always run it to a hub too, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
yeah. So yeah, the Strock traditionally, I can say this on the 3 and the 4, Strock clock stretching wasn't handled right on the Raspberry Pi. So if you had anything that clock stretched, it would do it, but it was tied to the clock speed. So I can't remember exactly the details, but it was like if your stretch was like 1/4 of the clock speed or something like that, it would work. But if it was any bigger than that, it would fail. And so the
I can't remember, is the I2C on the Raspberry Pi a dedicated piece of hardware, or is it doing more of a bit banging thing? Because if it's a bit banging thing, all that clock checking stuff, all that kind of stuff, goes out the window because the microprocessor and garbage collection and all the other things an operating system has to do.
Yeah, there are workarounds, by the way. If you're using those machines, and like I say, if I find this book, it has the solution, okay? And it's something like C+ on the Raspberry Pi for IOC or something. I'll find the book, and these, if you happen to be on Kindle Unlimited, this is on Kindle Unlimited, so you can get the latest books, and there's about 4 or 5 that look at, like, if you want to learn how to do GPIO through the Linux drivers, they got it. And if you want to use Python with it, they got it. And there's a series of books written by this one man that are absolutely incredible. So I'll look for it. That's all I got, I think.
Okay. Anyone else?
Well, next week I plan to have my sensors mounted and hopefully operating a lot better, and so I can do a better demo of that 8x8, or actually 3 times 8x8 for that 380 degree, to see how well I can see obstacles, on the floor and stuff.
Are you using the time of flight to see the obstacles, or are you holding out for the camera? The OpenMV camera doesn't have distance measurement. You can sort of infer it if you know exactly what you're looking at. But these are 8x8 time of flight sensors, and they have a 60-degree range. Range, and so when I put 3 of them together, I get 180. And I've seen people for can detection. I've seen people use even sonars, right? So if you have, or IR. So if you have the IRs placed where, the lower IR intersects with the can, and the upper one is taller than the can, you can detect the can there. I mean, that's an easy one.
So I should be able to see the cans and see the walls and see the opening with the camera and the sensors. The sensors are going to be pretty blind, but the camera will say, hey, there's something here, and then I can figure out which sensor is mapped in that area, and I can get a rough range on it. Yeah. And then at the claw, I'll have a better time of flight, just one dedicated to pulling in the last, centimeter or so, last 10 centimeters to get it close so that I can grab it. But it'll have its own dedicated time of flight, just a simple, single one.
When you get really close like that, if you're using an ultrasonic, it works well. All right. The reason for that is because the object is close, so it pings back and forth really quick. Where the problem with ultrasonic is if you're trying to catch something at 4 feet, right? Because it's got to be 4 feet out and 4 feet in, and that's probably 39 milliseconds. So, it's that, but as the target gets close, the ultrasonics become more viable, and they've been used very successfully in 6CAN.
Yeah,
I did
that's a good
find-
option.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I want to show you that book, guys. So I'm going to present now.
Oh, Carl's in.
Yeah. Okay, this is the book that I was telling you about. Okay, and he has, so the two things you got to take out of this. This one is in C. Some people don't like it. If you want to do Python, he does it. But it's Harry Fairhead. That's the name. You look that up on Amazon, and you should be able to find a whole bunch of books that are really nice. And the ones in these series, they have the blue top and a little bit in the middle and his name on the bottom. Now, if you're getting this particular one, you want to make sure you've got the 3rd edition, okay? Because there's the 1st edition and the 2nd, and they're all on sale. They sell them all. And let's see if I can do a real... Okay, so here you can see there's a whole series of books. And most of them are, like I say, if you happen to be on Kindle Unlimited, they're free. Okay. Some cool books there. I'm sure there's a lot of common material between them because the topics are covering the same subject and different views. But at least pick up one that fits the way you would like to look at it. And I mean, that is really a good source. So anyway, I'm sorry, Mike. I didn't mean to, but I found it. I wanted to share it.
Yeah, I like him because he has a lot of PyPico stuff.
Yeah.
I'm a PyPico fan, so.
Yeah. But if you want to look up that clock stretching,
Right.
it'll be in that book, the one I showed you.
Mm-hmm.
And he also shows you how to get around it, at least up through the 4. The 5 is going to be different. He doesn't have that. He would say you go through the Linux drivers for the 5 until it settles out. Yeah.
I've got something I can share that is a significant advancement from where I was at a couple of weeks ago. So let me see if I can get that going. So I can demonstrate it. Let's see. Share this. So, I've gotten the my ROS2 driving or navigation software that I used in ROS1 on the Robo Columbus Challenge to work in ROS2, and have interfaced it to the Turtlebot simulator. And so what I can show here is I'll do a ROS bag record. Let me see the bag. Is this coming through? Can you all see this?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'll turn on ROSBAG record. So I can run ROS2 run scripted bot driver, which is the package. Scripted mover is the mover program that accepts a sequence of commands. Drive waypoint. So this TotalBot simulator is in a 10 by 10 array. So let's drive up to 4, and then let's head on over to 3, 8, and then let's do a stop and pause for 5 seconds so that we can get the points for pausing by the cone, and then drive way points back to 1, 1. So off he goes, and what's interesting here is it's using actions, ROS2 actions, and ROS2 actions are a thing where okay, so he's going up to, let's see, I'm printing out the goals. So it gives you feedback. So ROS2 actions are a thing that you use for long-running goals, and they let you give feedback from the thing that's executing the goal to the client that requested the goal. And the client can also cancel the goal. So there the robot has made a couple of waypoints, and it slowed and stopped at the waypoint, and now I think it's headed back, and it'll do the stop for 5 seconds next, I think. No, it's going back to 1, 1, so it must have done its thing already. And it's reporting progress, % complete on the progress. So that's pretty neat. That's the ROS2 action servers doing stop and drive waypoints movements. And then if we call up to run plot juggler, we should be able to, okay, interesting, should be able to import the data from 130, and we'll import command val. There's some debug messages, which is something that we're going to go reach in the workshop series at the moment, and I think that should be all we want for right now. So we'll say okay to that, and then break this up into a bunch of plots, and can pull out the now what's kind of neat is that you can do in Plot Juggler is you can select two things and drag them up as an XY plot, and swap them, and here we should have an XY plot of the robot's motion. We do not. Okay, I'll have to take a look at that.
I think you selected 2 Z's.
Oh.
Set a position X, Y.
Let me try that again, and I didn't get turtle one pose is really what I wanted, and so
No, that's cool.
turtle one pose, X and Y, and right click and drag it over there and say OK. And there's there you see the path that the robot drove expressed as an XY plot. And then we can look at the velocity that it okay, so it went to the first waypoint, ramped down, went to the second waypoint, ramped down, paused for 5 seconds, then it did its return back to the starting point. So that's the sort of thing. Oh, and we can look at the commanded linear and angular velocity. So there's the linear velocity, which pretty much matches. It's kind of ramping up kind of fast, and might have a bug in there. And angular velocity, you can see where it was. So it was turning here, then it reached 0 for an angular velocity, then it turned in the other direction, and so you can track it as it was commanded to rotate.
Yes, looks like a really good tool to debug a PID loop. By looking at the proportional integral components.
Exactly. So plot juggler is awesome, and having the TurtleBot simulator lets me debug algorithms on the desk inside of a 10 by 10 arena and not have to take the robot outside. I realize that it's missing all kinds of real world things like wheel slippage and obstacles and such, but it lets you get the algorithms right. And we're messing with things like these actions which take place over a period of time and give feedback. That's kind of nice. And so here you can, well, let me just see if I can drag this over. How can I drag this? I wish I could expand this this progress feedback on the client side. I'm not sure how to make that happen, but anyway, that's what I got.
Very cool.
Carl, you arrived.
Yeah, I've been here a little while. Been eating my stuff. Wife made me bourbon chicken we had some frozen food. Been sitting here. Got gonna upgrade I made a briefcase with lots of stuff in it. And we're gonna do an upgrade. Because I've discovered the wonders of WLED. And I've seen it around for a while. And I'm like, I don't need, it's too much. I don't need to worry about all that stuff. And then I found out that there's some hardware out there that implements WLED directly. I mean, it's so popular, they made real hardware stuff. You put things into it. So I was in Micro Center, and an ESP32 Node MCU was calling my name. So for $10, somehow it got into my basket. And when I got home, I had a bunch of these. I've ordered a bunch of these big I had 4 of these ordered for a thing. I wanted to do a big matrix and thing. And I said, well, I got this thing. Let's see how hard it is. And I plugged it into the breadboard. It took me longer to find clips and stuff while it was installing over web USB, all the stuff it needed to install, a little bit of configuration. And after I sat down and 30 minutes later, I've taken it apart because so I can't demonstrate it. But 30 minutes later, I had this matrix doing spinny things and flashy things and all kinds of crazy things. And it was really easy. And I'm like, I'm an idiot because I should have been doing this a long time ago. And my the client that I've got for this briefcase wants an upgrade. And so I said, he goes, well, could you do us an upgrade or something? Or could you make it do different patterns? And I'd hand coded all the patterns. And I'm like, man, that's a pain in the ass. And I saw this WLED where literally they have 100 different patterns, one of which I for sure know they want. I don't have to code it. It takes 30 minutes to blow it, an ESP32 on it. And then I just got to do a little rewiring in the briefcase. And right now I'm looking at even doing that different. I'm looking at doing I had one of these solder boards, right? So you can see where I did some soldering and things and Velcroed it in and that kind of stuff. I'm like, oh, that's cool. Now I found one of these for the ESP32 directly. It's a board like this where it has screw terminals. I just pop in the board and I do a little ferrules on everything and screw it in. It'll be more impressive when people look at it than my scraggly soldering stuff going on. And I'm like, yeah, for about $18 or $25, I'm deciding which one I want to get. I can have it here in a couple of days and we can bolt them up and client's paying for it. So it'd be way nicer, all that kind of stuff. So I'm like, okay, we're going to go with that and see what happens. It'll be fun. It'll be way fun. In fact, here, let's see if I can do this. These are one of the boards I'm looking at. I want to make sure all the terminals are the right, because the naming between the different ESP32s out there, the naming, the pins are slightly shifted and all that kind of stuff. So you can't really, you got to make sure you get if you don't get the right board for the right thing, that's okay, because it's just electrical connections. It doesn't matter. But it's when you pay attention to plugging things in. You certainly don't want to be plugging 5 volts into the ground of the thing, and then on the ground, plug in the ground and have it all shorted out because you didn't pay attention, because the pin namings are different. DroneBot Workshop a little bit ago, I think in the last month, did an ESP32 board recap. And so that was kind of fresh in my brain about these ESP32 boards. And there's about, I don't know, a dozen different kinds. So whichever you need to pick, some of them have Bluetooth, some of them have only Wi-Fi, some of them have both Bluetooth and Wi-Fi, some of them have antenna ports on them, so you can put the little SME or SMA, those little pain in the butt antenna connectors. I don't know what else you call them actually. You can put those in there if you need to extend the antenna and all that kind of stuff. And that was all in my brain. And so I'm like, okay, let's put all this stuff together. And it turns out I don't have enough headers to make this happen. So I got to looking. And Amazon, we're about to spend $25 here, I think. And have something in here in the next couple of days. Well, this is Monday the 5th, so this one's probably out. And so I want it pretty fast so I can do it this weekend and return it back on Tuesday and get it to work. The other thing I got going on that was actually cool, since I have your attention, I can plug this in and we can see some things. This is the current instantiation of HugoBot, and we got the teensy and all that kind of stuff going on there. What we were able to do with HugoBot this last time, I'm working on making a menu system, or getting a menu system together, and I found one, and I can provide a link. I don't have it handy right now, about doing menus. Maybe you saw some of that last time where I had it on there. And this guy spent a lot of time, effort, energy. Let's see if I can get rid of the glare. And a lot of effort and energy on making this menu thing work. And he had just a standard encoder. And this guy right here is using this fella right here, let me get a pointer. This fella right here is using an I2C from Adafruit. This is something they call their seesaw interface. They're trying to make a universal sensor library that does a whole bunch of things. And this has a seesaw interface on it, so I plug I2C into it. And then I can do the I2C thing on it. And I converted it from a normal encoder, which is pretty easy, to this seesaw for getting things. And it works. It's a bit wonky because I'm still debating. I'm still worrying about a little debouncing. And this is pretty cool because it does a whole bunch of things. Like, for instance, if I go up here, the options are kind of screwed up at the moment. You get a chance to do all of these, each one of these screens to make it look however you want. And in this case, I've actually worked on this one a little bit to make it look better. See, I've got the servos up there, and then, for instance, I need to change that address. I select it, and I'm able to update this, and I can do doubles. Or if I come down here to things like the state of this thing, it knows how to do on and off by turning it on and off, right? And then you could even select things like, no, not state. Come on, you can go down there. Where it says tune. You can even give it a list of things that it can be for your setup. And then when you hit select, now it's set, and all those variables are set to wherever you want them, and now you can then save that off and that kind of thing. I'm working on what I want to do, and then you can exit out of that screen. You go back up to the menu. It's really nice, and you can do all kinds of fun stuff. Like if you're watching right there. Oh no, that's options. It just looks funny. It has I got a loose wire somewhere. What's fun about this is that it's got fonts in there, and I can change out the fonts, and I can put in icons and emojis on this thing too. It has capability in the thing. I don't have the live. I'll send the link out to the list on where this is. We had to do some work on it because this is an ST7735S board. He really likes the ILI based boards, and so even though the code is out there, we had to do a bunch of work to update with all the changes that he had, and so I'm making plans to fork his code, and because he did such a good job, spend some of my time in updating his do a PR request so the 7735 boards are up to date on that. And not sure how soon that's going to happen, but it's going to happen pretty quick because I just got the extra standard encoder that he was using, basically, and I got the extra screen like here because I ordered another one of them because I didn't want to undo all this stuff as I'm putting HugoBot together to be able to do that. And it's a real nice menuing system. I don't know how well it's going to play when, for instance, the idea on this was I was going to have this thing coded up to play different games, 6-can, 4-square, quick trip, those sorts of things. And you would go to one of these menu items called games, you hit that, you go down to which game you want, and you hit select. At that point, that process gets called, and so that's where all the looping is, that's where all the stuff ends up being, and it doesn't exit that until it comes back, because there's nothing in the main loop, by the way. There's just absolutely nothing. This is all works off interrupts and that kind of thing. So I've got plenty of, the main loop's doing nothing. So I don't know how we're going to interact with that and how we play with that as the robot features and stuff are going on. But that's tomorrow's problem, not today's problem. It's coming though, but that's how that works. So anyway.
What's the name of the menuing system software, Harold?
Yeah, you guys can Google just about as good as anybody else, right? Hold on a second. Let me get my biscuits out of the way. All right. And we will. Oh, hold on. One more. There it is. That is the menuing system right there. You guys can see that? I can zoom in a little bit. This Chris Kasprazik, I have no idea where he's from or what he's doing, but he did a real good job there.
Nice.
Is it the best job ever? I don't know. I haven't finished playing with it, but he's got some examples. Like for instance, this example as you go in and it says, "Oh look, I'm using a teensy." He gave me an example with a teensy. Everything's well and good, right? Well, not really. What happens is this version of this, as we found and played with it, for instance, this whole micro font thing. He changed out his font system. He's now using fonts from the Adafruit graphics library, and also he has this colors thing that doesn't exist anywhere except for in the other library, in the other download, and the other thing that he has. So we need to update some of the stuff, that kind of thing, right? So it's not uncommon that they have a pet project and they did this because they needed it, but then they really have this pet thing they like to use, this other thing we like to use. So I figure I could help the guy out for a little bit. It depends, because there's several people. There's at least one, maybe two people on my Twitch stream that have ordered that screen and an encoder, and they may be doing it specifically to update this library. And I might not have to, because one of my Twitch followers may get it done, because they're kind of apt to want to do stuff and help and play with things and that kind of stuff, which I think is very, 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 very cool. And so anyway, that's what I've been up to.
Cool.
Yeah. And I was digging the Ross thing, by the way, showing off actions there, Paul. That's nice. I did submit a talk to KCDC. I've been submitting Ross talks to all these conferences for the last few years, even before the pandemic, and no one's ever picked it up. So I'm getting better and better in how to do some of the talks. And so the idea was, I saw a TED talk by somebody who was doing Ross, and I liked how she presented a bunch of things. So I think we're gonna climb on some of that, how we use literally talk. I know I've got a couple of Ross people in the thing here, so if I start talking noise, that's all right. You correct me, keep me straight. That the Ross is akin to, if you want to think about object oriented programming, in the sense that I know something. I know a servo, right? A servo, you tell me whether it's continuous or how many degrees, and then I get to tell it what degrees to go to or whatever that is. That's one thing, like in the navigation menu or the navigator, that kind of stuff. They just need to know, I want to go this direction. Something else figures out where to turn all the servos to go that, and then something else figures out how to actually talk to the servo to do the thing, right? And at no point in that higher level thing do they care whether or not the servo can actually do the thing or not, because somebody's told it it's going to do a thing. And so they can, that removes that kind of responsibility, right? And so that's how I was going to give this talk, is pitch the thing and have an example of an action, a service, a couple of nodes, and have like a servo, a couple different kinds of servos, a step promoter, and maybe an IMU or something pumping out data on a board that I could carry and then be able to show things off. And then even to the point where I could probably give them a little bit a website where we could push out through, as I'm giving the demonstration. So if they wanted to jump onto the website and control one of these things, they can control one of these things and watch the things and have it all feedback. It's a little bit to set up. But having the idea of making these Lego style blocks available to some of these people, I think opens up a lot of stuff for a lot of people that are like, I don't know how to make a servo work, but this guy can make the servo work, and I'm going to borrow his block, and I'm going to stick it over there, and I'm going to talk to it. I think it's a big advantage of being able to do that. So I don't have to rewrite my servo code every time, or I don't have to rewrite the thing that's reading my IMU all the time Yeah, I know as roboticists and things, we'll have our own little libraries of stuff. And that's well and good for us, but the people coming in, even though the ROS 2 is a heavy lift, at the very base it is I've got a thing that knows how to talk to a servo, and I'm going to tell that thing to make the servo do something, and I can do that in most things. That's how I make it simplest.
There's a name for that architectural pattern. It's called a fine-grained composable pattern.
Okay.
And one of the prominent examples is Unix, and the idea behind the pattern, the design pattern, is that you have things, a lot of components that do a small job very well or very effectively and can be composed into a larger collection that does something that none of them were ever designed with the vision of doing.
Sure.
So in the Unix world, you find that through the mechanism of utilities like sed and WC for word count and cut and ls, and they all have a zillion options on the command line options to get them to do particular things for you, but they do a small job well and flexibly. And then you string them together with pipes. So you pipe the standard out from one into standard in on another, and it does its little thing, and pipe standard out from that into standard in on another one. And so in that way, Unix, the Unix commands are composable into more capable things. And ROS is the same way. The idea is that you should build small components that do a simple thing well and flexibly, and that can be composed. In ROS, it's through the mechanism of publish and subscribe or actions or services, but it's the same idea of composing a more complex thing out of simple components. Is really that's the name for what you were describing, Harold.
I'll be sure to include that in my talk if anybody ever picks it up and I have to write it. You know how that works. But you get the idea, right? I mean, the actual heavy lift is actually installing all the stuff and figuring out what Gazebo does and all these other kind of things, right? But at the very, very, very low end of it, I got a thing that knows how to talk to a device, and then that device gives me the interface on how to talk to it. And as long as that thing knows how to talk to the device, is doing what it's supposed to do, I don't really care what it does, right? Or I shouldn't. I mean, at some point I do care, but for people that are programming and people that are wanting things to doing, at that level they shouldn't care.
Yeah, right? It's a black box.
Black box. Yeah.
Cool stuff.
Anyway, that's me, man. That's me. And I'm eating a biscuit.
Oh, so there you go.
It's one of those Red Lobster, Cheddar Bay butter based biscuit that you get in a box, and they're really good, and I don't have to spend a lot of money at Red Lobster. So there you go. And Paul, whoever else, I don't have just a ton of time, but I do like this ROS thing, and if I can lend a hand and find a moment or two to help you guys on it, I will. There's no doubt about it. No doubt about it. Right now, Daisy wants some loving, so that's probably the most important thing right now.
Okay, anyone else?
I've just been finding creative ways to break things this week. So,
hey, my man, you do that. You do that. That's fantastic. That's how you learn, brother.
Yeah, less creative ways of putting them back together. But, so yeah, it's been system management nightmare and fixing software problems this week for me. I still don't have a robot that moves on its own that I made, but I'm working towards that. I'm taking the long road. So, but yeah, Paul did your test and it worked after another export and a couple of Docker destroys and rebuilds. So it works now. But
Thanks for doing that test, Brad.
I've just been playing with Docker and trying to figure it out, and I'm still doing all my code on the Arduino. I've kind of put that aside to learn as much as I can about ROS2 while the class is available. So I'll get back to it. But right now I'm taking a wee break. One thing that I've been thinking about, and I don't really know the best answer to, is I've kind of been looking at ROS2 control and how I might go about talking to the Arduino and kind of exposing my sensors. So right now I have a collection of sensors and a couple of actuators. The actuators can work with command bells and things like that. And the sensors are kind of another story. And so, I know that there's ROS serial that I could use. For the simple stuff I have, I have a collection of sonars, which are going to have a distance. I have a collection of IRs, which are going to, have a distance. I'm going to have, bump switches that are binary, but I don't know how much of that, I really need to expose to, upper layers yet. What I really wanted to do is kind of collect all that stuff and send telemetry, so that it can be put in the bag file and then visualized later, or dynamically even on a web service or something. But that kind of brings up the question of what's the best way for like a Raspberry Pi 2, or a Raspberry Pi 4 running ROS to talk to Arduino like microcontrollers. Anybody got thoughts?
So there are two major alternatives. One is, I think, what Mike's got, where he's got some microcontrollers that talk through serial ports, and then he has a ROS node that receives the data from the serial ports and publishes it on topics into the ROS infrastructure. And we'll go through that in the workshop series. The second way, you mentioned ROS serial. That's really a ROS1 ism. That package is not available or applicable to ROS2. The ROS2 version of it, which I also hope to get to and was playing with over the week, is called micro ROS, and essentially, in a nutshell, micro ROS is a C interface to something that sends messages over a transport. Transport could be serial, could be Wi-Fi, to an agent that publishes that data into the ROS infrastructure. And that would be the way that I think you'd probably want to go, and it's the way I want to explore, but have not really done much other than do the tutorials so far.
So that brings up a question. So kind of touching on the topic you did earlier, where you're trying to separate sensors and actuators into small things that do one thing very, very clearly. So rather than kind of glom up all the sensor data into one structure, I'm thinking that all of those need to kind of be their own topic. Like, Sonos have their topic, IRs have their topic, whatever, Is that kind of the thinking with macros? Or?
That's good practice, but it also a thing to know about ROS is it's got these standard messages, and it's good practice to, you can make your own proprietary messages, there's no problem with that, but there are a lot of standard messages that will interface to other packages, like odometry interfaces to the nav stack. And so there's a kind of a meta level of knowledge, if you will, about which standard messages are good to use. If you're just looking to capture debug data, which is as far as we're going in the workshop series, then it doesn't matter. You just invent your own message and put as much or as little in it as you can. But when you're trying to interface to off-the-shelf packages, you really want to be cognizant of which messages they expect.
Right. For me to use the extended column filter, I needed to convert my encoder data into the odometry message.
Yeah.
And so I did that. Before I was using just like pose-like messages, just to close the loop. But,
you know, there's a lot of really smart people that have worked on this ROS2 thing.
Yeah.
And they've had a lot more experience and a lot more trial and error going on than I've been able to put into this. And I found that they rarely, unless I'm doing something crazy, is there not a type or there's not a message type that I can't use to do what I need to get done. You know, if I got to make my own, I got to make my own. That's just the way it is. But I like the teleop stuff and the navigation stuff and the stuff like for reading an IMU. You know, it's got X, Y, and Z and acceleration and X, Y, and Z and a whole bunch of other stuff that's already in the package to use. You know, you just got to use it. And I'm like, yeah, go look for those kind of things. I'd be really surprised that we are doing anything so crazy that there's not something we can use. Now, do you want to use it? That's going to be up to you. Maybe you want to consume it a different way. Or maybe, like what I've had time in the past, getting it from one form into another because the way they're sending you encoded bits and images. And images were a pain in the butt. But some of that's because my Python I couldn't upgrade. But that's a whole other story. I played with that stuff on the rover.
Yeah, but I can imagine Brad's wants to use an Arduino, so probably the simplest thing is just send a serial message over to the Pi and then convert that into something like I did into odometry from the encoders.
Right.
Or
to the Arduino, that can be ad hoc, whatever. Right. So
right.
You know, if I've got a command belt that's got, you know, go this fast in this direction.
Right.
You know,
that comes from teleop. Yeah.
Then, it doesn't matter.
Right.
You know, I can take that and parse it with Python or whatever, right? So that doesn't matter. Or C. But going the other direction, I just kind of wanted to give it some thought. And so, anybody have a good idea where I can find the message formats? I know CommandVille, and I know some of the time of flight stuff I should be able to find, but I'm having a hard time putting my hand on it.
So there's a command you can run in ROS2, ROS2 interface list, I believe it is. And let me just check that, Ross.
Oh, crap.
But on Git, you can get a pretty good documentation of it. I think it's good.
Yeah. So ROS2 interface list lists all of the messages that and services and actions that your installation knows about, or that the packages that are installed in your installation knows about, and then you can look at any one of them with a ROS2 interface show, I believe is the command.
Yeah, that sounds right. I'm just having, wow, there's a lot of messages.
Yeah, there's a lot of them. So if you do, for example, I'm just getting the syntax right, ROS2 interface So you say you want to know what's in any given message, because it might be interesting. You do ROS2 interface show, and then the path to the message, which could be something like nav_messages / message / odometry with a capital O. And that will print out the fields that are in the odometry message. And you can do that with any of the messages.
Okay. Cool. Okay, that answers my question.
I'll post those commands in the chat.
Okay, geometry. Yeah, apparently my setup doesn't know odometry. Okay, well, that was my only question for now.
I thought I'd mention something building on some of the discussion during Mike's presentation when he talked about the height of his sensors. Back several weeks ago, I showed my work in progress for my 6-can robot. And at the time, I pointed out it's also going to be an experimental platform for several sensors. And the sensor platform I had at the time had the sensors located all down here. And then when I assembled my robot a little bit further, I realized that as soon as you went and grabbed a can, then the can blocked all 3 of the sensors, and they couldn't see in front of the can anymore. And I still needed to see a can. So I moved 2 of the sensors up above the can where the can will be. Lots of fun. I wanted to ask a question about OBS Studio. I know there was some discussion about setting it up on Paul's computer at the beginning of the meeting. A number of people I know in other virtual meetings use OBS Studio very well for window-in-window or picture-in-window presentations. So I attempted to install it on my Windows 10 system, on which I use the Avast antivirus software package, which would not accept the installation of OBS Studio. In fact, turning off the antivirus was not sufficient. Based on the research I did to solve the problem, the OBS Studio installation wanted Avast completely uninstalled and then reinstalled later after it was installed, which I would not do. I just wondered if anybody here has run into a similar problem, maybe using Avast antivirus on a Windows machine.
So I haven't used Avast since helping my dad in the Windows 7 days on his machines. And I do use OBS Studio. That's how I record when I record these meetings. But I use it on the Windows 10 box right now to record. Other times I've used it on 11 for picture-in-picture kind of stuff. The only thought that I can share is that my own choice, not that it's not an expert opinion or anything, but my own kind of research and findings and choice were that these third-party AV, while they may have, and I think experience showed that they did often do better than the Microsoft products back in the Windows XP days. Now that we're in the Windows 10 and certainly 11 days, I have the impression that it's hard to do better than the native integration of Windows Defender. And so that's what I run now on the machine that we use each week. And I've discovered along the way, thanks to some fraudulent loan fraud scam that I've received and been dealing with the police and the lawyer. And another copy of it just came in yesterday or today. So what I've discovered in that is that at least I think through Microsoft Office 365, I believe it is, Windows Defender has some built-in privacy kinds of things where it'll check your credit score, it'll do dark web searches and reports. It's got a handful of features that I never expected to find, and they're just along for the ride as part of Windows Defender when you have the right level of whatever. So that's the only thought that I can share, because I noticed that towards the end of Windows XP and Microsoft 7, when I was still maintaining like 10 or a dozen family members' computers, I noticed that the third-party clients started, antivirus tools started to get really difficult to maintain, and they started to behave really badly. And life just cleaned up so much better when I switched to the native one. And
That's a good comment. Thank you very much.
There you go.
Yeah, I'm kind of curious how many people are using Windows Defender versus third-party antivirus software.
Yeah, I quit using third party. I do Windows Defender too because it's
lazy
good
on
enough.
Gordon's. Too chicken to change. Automatically renewing. Lazy to cancel it.
I admit I use Avast because nothing's ever gone wrong with it that I know of, and I can't be bothered to research the whole field again.
Yeah, I use WebRoot on some of my machines, and antivirus Windows. WebRoot is transparent, and it does a really good job. I've been real impressed with it. Like today when I was trying to alter my host file, and I couldn't do it. And the reason I couldn't do it is because it was locked by the WebRoot to keep people from changing your host file. So I mean, there's Windows Defender. I do run that on some of my machines because I'm cheap, and it's good too.
Windows Defender works really well. That's all I've ever run for years.
Yeah. So I'm just saying is that the reason I use WebRoot is because it's sort of, it's one of these things. I bought a 3-year license way back when, and it's still going on. So I don't know if I'll renew it or not. It was very inexpensive.
And it was, from my experience, having tried WebRoot, Avast, McAfee did against and then Symantec. I mean, Symantec and McAfee, they decided that you would purchase the machine to run those tools. So there was no cycles left for anything else but virus scanning, just in the background. It was great. Yeah. And Avast and WebRoot, of all the ones I've seen, they were the best behaved back in the day.
Yeah. Now, if you are infected, there might be other tools that would make sense. Malware bytes or something like that for cleaning things and doing thorough searches. But for just antivirus, I think Windows Defender, at least for Windows systems, is probably the best way to go now. Since Windows 10 and beyond.
Okay, that's good news. Thanks, everybody, for your input. Another thing to add to my list of things to look into.
It's funny how that grows, that list, isn't it?
Yeah, it doesn't shrink very often at all.
It's more like attrition.
Yeah, things fall off because whatever you were going to do, they don't make that thing anymore until you get what you want to do.
Like a stack of electronic modules to try.
Carl's laughing because if he doesn't laugh, he's going to cry about it. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, it's painful.
Yeah, I maintain a religious to-do list, and I've noticed lately the back end of that list, there's more things being added on a daily basis than coming off the front end of that list.
Life is too short, but on the other hand, it gives you something to live for, right? So,
I've got a question. That Jack, you're Jack Jones, right?
Yes.
Are you receiving DPRG lists emails?
It's not the weekly ones letting you know when the meeting is, right?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
Sorry. Still can't hear me. Right? Oh, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
All right. So not the weekly ones that give out the meetings, right?
No, I'm talking about like on the 24th, Carl sent out an invitation to judge at First Tech, and they all say DPRG list at the front of them. It sounds like you'd recognize them if you were getting them. So
yeah,
sounds like
I
not.
think so.
You are getting them?
No, I don't think so.
Right. Okay. Thanks. Yeah, I'd sent you a message and I didn't get anything back, so I'm trying to fill out my list here.
No. Paul, the other question you have to ask is, Jack, did you ever subscribe to the mailing list?
I think I did a long time ago. Can't remember for sure anymore.
Okay. Do you still use the same email address?
I do, yes.
Okay. Because I know you had a weird one.
Yeah.
And then the other guy that I can't reach, who's a club member, is Volodymyr. I don't know if anyone has knows how to contact him, but he's not responded to any of my direct approaches.
Okay.
He has gone back to motherland. Not to reach.
I don't know about that, but I remember meeting him before COVID, but I don't think we've seen him since, really.
No.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, he's still a member, at least according to
that means
the
I think he's still. Yeah, so that means he has renewed his membership sometime in the last year.
Right. Right.
So, Dad, I'm trying to think.
Well,
I mean, how are you trying to get hold of him, Paul?
Well, I've resorted to a variety of methods, Doug. I started out with emails to the email address that was on the members' website, but then when I didn't get that from some of the folks, I contacted someone via LinkedIn and someone else via Facebook.
Okay, all right. The reason why I'm saying, there's a couple of reasons that things could go. One, if they became a member and they used an old email, or they use an alternate email, or we have every once in a while we have somebody who doesn't want to give their email, so and the script on that page, he's just going to give whatever emails listed in the membership.
Yep.
Now,
I'm just trying to make sure we can contact all the members.
Yeah, and you can't even go by their membership. I could tell you I could tell you probably how they paid for their membership, but that's probably goes off to if it's like me, it goes to an email that I don't look at very often. So.
Maybe we don't want to dive too deep on that. That was just a quick insert, since we seem to have a what's the word? Dead air moment.
Yeah.
Do we have any other topics? I know Carl wants to say a few words at the end. Do we have any other topics that people want to bring up and talk about before we get to that? So maybe we'll stop recording and let Carl say his bit, and then we'll call it a night. Does that sound reasonable?
Sounds good to me.
Okay, I've turned off my